You're tuned into RX Radio. Movement prescribed. Brought to you by Prescript.com. A personalized approach to keeping you healthy and making your best even better. Your hosts, Dr. Jordan Shallow and Dr. Jordan Ginta.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of RX Radio. Huge thanks to everyone who's hopped on the RX'D programming. If you haven't, it's still up for 1 month free trials, nothing to lose. So head on over to www.pre-script.com. We get the question every single week, how do I warm up for X, Y, or Z? It's really more of a question of how you prepare your shoulders, hips, spines for tasks. And we've gone through and we've answered that question for you. So if you're interested and you're looking to kind of upskill your performance, this is going to be where I would start. Programs refresh weekly. Video tutorials. The app is quite easy to use, and you get to see mine and Junta's and Killian's smiling faces on a weekly basis. Now, enough paying the bills. Getting to today's episode, we have Seth Albersworth. Seth is originally from Canada. He's currently one of the top-ranked powerlifters, single ply. He's one of the handful of people that I've ever met who squatted over 1,000 squat. Seth has squatted 1102 single ply, which just to have that on your back must be just a phenomenal experience for anyone. Imagine what 1,000 pounds must feel like, let alone 1,100. So Seth is super interesting guy, super smart dude, but in an interesting position that I think a lot of people that listen to RX Radio might be in the world of superimposing their passion in real life with translating that passion into a business online. And Seth is very much in the throes of that. A very smart guy. He's actually going through the latter parts of a chiropractic college, so I know a lot of you guys out there can resonate with that. So we sort of talk about how to effectively superimpose your passion in real life on the internet and do so in an effective way. And Seth kind of has some funny stories of the trials and tribulations that come along with that. And I think there's a lot to be learned on the front end, but also kind of between the lines when it comes to attrition and things like that. And we both sort of admit to some shortcomings in being able to effectively put out things and relay our message and communicate. Seth is, him and Miana, they work alongside me at Elite FTS. When it comes to strength sports, look no further. There's something to be said about the experience that comes along with doing what it takes to squat 1,100 pounds. That to me is like the PhD, double PhD, as far as looking at evidence from a personal experience standpoint. That is evidence that is so unbelievably rare. So you definitely take what Seth says about training. Out of the gate, we usually do the stuff at the end. Check out Seth on Instagram. Pull up make sure I get it right. His name is Seth Albersworth, Albersworth. He's based out of Florida. He trains alongside Dan Bell, and it's Seth.Albersworth on Instagram. Make sure to check out his stuff, and activatedperformance.net. Again, one of the strongest guys you'd ever want to meet, one of the nicest guys you ever want to meet, and I think a really insightful conversation for a lot of you guys out there who might be going through some of the struggles that he and I have navigated and continue to navigate. So I hope you guys enjoy the episode. Again, if you're interested in hopping on, or not if you're interested, you got nothing to lose, go to www.pre-script.com, hop on the RX programming, use code RXD100, get your 1 month for free. That's not going to be around forever. So if you want to get your foot in the door, see what it's all about, do that now. If not, you guys enjoy the episode and we'll see you next week.
So I guess what was the impetus? What was for most people, like for me, powerlifting was something I did after sports, right? Like it wasn't like I didn't know what powerlifting was until I met Dan. I was just like, oh, this guy's really jacked. Let you want to be friends? And then I'm like, wait, what do you do? Like, oh, you squat bed, and people watch that? Really? That sounds awfully boring. So like, I guess what was the impetus? What got you into powerlifting in the first place?
Well, I raced motocross growing up. And
as you do.
Yep. I quickly ran out of talent. I ended up getting hurt a ton. And I spent 14 years in the sport. So after my second shoulder surgery, I was talking to the surgeon. And he suggested that I start lifting some weights to try to get the shoulder stronger because I'd recover better if it was a stronger joint.
You kind of took that one and ran with it.
Yeah.
You ran with that to a very unhealthy place.
So, I mean, at first, because I was coming off the shoulder surgery, my bench was absolutely horrendous. Like, it took me 3 meets to bench body weight. Just because.
You competed like right after, like you got out of racing bikes, then you got right into powerlifting from there, and just like that was a natural progression. I
took about a year of just like training powerlifting, figuring shit out, and then once I realized that, hey, maybe I could do okay with this, I signed up for a meet, and that was that.
Yeah, and I think that's a weird in powerlifting. That's a weird story because most people are never sure of when they want to do their first meet. Like I struggled with that when I started competing. It was like, I didn't feel strong enough, right? Mm-hmm. Like, and I mean, we share a similar experience that our training partners they're pretty strong, right? Yeah. Like, and that can mind fuck you to like, oh, well, I'm not squatting 1,000 whatever raw or pulling 881, so I'm not going to be ready for this meet. But most people, like most amateurs, are like, oh, when should I do my first meet? And then I don't know of many people who frankly had the balls to step into a meet and not bench body weight.
Well, you know what? I was lucky because one of my first training partners at the University of Calgary, he was a fairly decent bodybuilder, and he's who kind of told me to do a meet. And he just told me, don't be a pussy, sign up, you need a starting point. And so I signed up and totaled like barely 11 something and just kept on pushing from there.
What year was that?
2012 or 2013. Can't remember off the top of my head. It's been.
Yeah, you've been doing it a while.
A little bit.
Now, in bringing that fast forward, like at what point did you start to take it so seriously that it's like, all right, this is becoming a problem?
Like,
when did the intervention, like you step in the front door and like all your friends and family are like, we're doing this because we love you.
Have you seen my fat kid pictures?
Your what?
My fat kid pictures?
No.
So when I quit motocross, I was about 180 pounds, got into powerlifting, trained at the university gym for a little bit, then started training at a powerlifting gym in Calgary. And one of the guys there was like, you need to gain weight, you need to gain weight, you need to gain weight. And of course, me being calorie restricted for years racing motocross, I was like, okay, fuck yeah, stuff my face. I went from 180 to like 330 in a period of 18 months. Like, worst choice of my life. But
Jesus.
I squatted 700 in knee sleeves at 19, so.
You squatted how much?
700 in sleeves at 19.
Holy shit. But your body weight was what?
330, so it wasn't that great.
Still 19, man. Like, I think there's something to this idea of old man strength. Like, yes. I mean, I'm coming on 30. Like, I don't have any kids. I don't train heavy very often. But if some young whippersnapper is like in a gym somewhere and I need to show up and like put him in his place, I just have an ability to tap into it that I didn't have. When I was 19, I was like it was a giraffe on ice. Like, I had no coordination when it came to throwing this stuff together. But that's a crazy starting point.
I was just balls, stupidity, and fatness. That's all it was.
So you're a triple threat, man.
But like, but what's funny is like that same meet, I benched 331.
Oh, like swings and roundabouts.
Yeah, exactly. And
when did you decide to go into the gear, like into single and multiply?
So I ended up, hurting my hip, leaving the IPF, and then started training with the Multi-Ply crew in Calgary. And they kind of got me pointed in a better direction. The guys there were like, you're way too fat, time to lose weight, time to get the diet in check. And so I basically bought a squat suit that was too small, ended up dropping down until I could fit in it, did my first week in single ply, and then that was that.
That's like, I struggled with knee wraps because if anyone's ever worn knee wraps, and there's like wearing knee wraps and then there's having someone wrap your knees, and there's a distinct difference between the two. Yep. Like, I wore knee wraps on a leg press when I was 18, trying to catch like the sickest quad. You put on the Branch Warren, you drive to the gym, you put on your knee wraps, you smash a leg press. Then I realized there was a distinct difference between that and having, like, I saw a photo of you wrapping Dan Bell's knees, and like I had phantom limb pain of my knees being wrapped by Dan Green when I used to compete like at a boss. And it's to think, oh yeah, that was fun. I'm going to do that to my entire body. Like, what was the impetus to be like, oh yeah, no, these guys they have my best interest at heart. I'm getting my body weight down. I'm going to squeeze into that thing and progressively overload my entire system.
Well, I guess when I first started looking at powerlifting, I was reading all the old articles on Elite. Then from there I started Google searching Dave Tate articles and found his old shit on T Nation, his really old shit on Deep Squatter. I started reading all the West Side stuff. So when I was a young kid, I thought Multi-Ply was cool. A little bit misguided, but that's what I thought. So I always wanted to get into it and try it.
My first exposure to powerlifting was actually in a multi-ply gym or a single-ply gym. It was called Wild Iron in Santa Clara, California. And I was the only raw lifter there. And the way the gym was broken up, it was broken up into sub 1,600 total and 1,600 total and above. So I was kind of like a meathead ex-hockey player turned wannabe pseudo bodybuilder trying to get strong. So I didn't have a total. So I was in this 1,600 group, but everyone was in gear. Yeah. I remember walking in the first day and they had a bunch of monos and I saw like 3 grown men just percolating into their squat suits. Like they're all just hanging there, like sinking in and just having a chat about like their day or traffic or something while they were just suspended in some weird bondage thing. I was like, I'm terrified. I'm absolutely terrified.
Just utter confusion.
Then what is the jump? Because if you you've gone multi too, right?
Yep. So I did one meet single ply here, and then the next meet I got some multi-ply stuff and hopped in it and had more fun.
That's the gateway drug, man. That's the gateway. Yeah. That's the story of being like, oh yeah, I was smoking reefer on Friday night, and I was just banging black tar heroin on Sunday.
Yep.
Now what's the future now? Because it seems to me, and I'm guilty of this in the way I look at training and look at programming, and it's something that, you're probably like me in the sense that you draw a lot of lessons outside of the gym from inside the gym. And the one thing I realized from training and powerlifting was that I am such a product of my environment, right? Like I don't know what it's like to deadlift not on a Friday, because Friday night at Boss Barbell, Andrew Herbert gets off shift. Dan, saunters his way back with a Diet Mountain Dew, and we deadlift. I don't know any other way, right? And it's like to see you go from like, oh, I'm around single ply guys. I'm gonna lift single ply, and then to more than that, like moving out to Florida and lifting with the guys you lift with now. Like how is that environment affected? Not even just your training and the results you're getting, but like just your mindset around training.
It is absolutely insane. Like it's beyond insane how the environment I'm in, the training partners I have. Like we have 2 guys that squat a grand raw in the same gym. We have 3 guys that squat 1,100 pound multi-ply in the same gym. It's nuts. I've learned so much just from watching and observing. Like just like if you just sat in the corner of that gym on a Sunday when we're squatting, you're gonna pick something up.
Yeah, that's the thing with me. Like you see it pop up in like pockets, like like Boss had its contingency, and then people gravitate. Like Big Tex in Florida had like Rob and Ben, and then like up in super training in Sacramento, and then like down in Miami, around like the hybrid guys, and then up in Toronto, up at Fortis. Like it's not by accident.
Well, the entire reason I went to Palmer, Florida was because I was still in multi-ply mindset, and I knew Daniel Tinagliero, Alan Piley, and Joe Jordan were here. So I'm like, okay, if I want a good training crew that isn't as fucked up as Westside, this is where I need to be.
That's how you base a lot of your life decisions.
Yep.
Now, how does that? Because like, dude, I ran into issues. So for those who don't know, Seth's in 7th quarter, Palmer, Florida, and that's in what part of Port now? Is Port Orange?
Port
Orange, yeah. So that's like we're sister schools to one another. So I went to Palmer West to Palmer East, and I ran into issues, man. Like when I was going through chiropractic college, I was probably similar to where I'm at now, like 250, 260. And I had a lot of people look at me go, yeah, no chance. No fucking chance are you getting your hands. And I look at you, and I've been around chiropractic for a while, and I understand that it's usually the bigger guys that are better adjusters because they don't need to jump on you. And I look at you and go, okay, how is overcoming objection and trying to meld these two things together? Like how has learning like the chiropractic side and the anatomy help your training? And then how is like your training and networking kind of affected like how you think about practice?
Well, that's a bit of a tough one to really wrap my mind around, but I think as far as trying to be a better chiropractor. I've had to learn how to be so gentle with people just so that I'm not terrifying them. Like, I've been told all the time that I have the gentlest touch in my quarter just because I'm so afraid of scaring someone that I do not want to just crank on them and go to town. And at the same time, I'm able to kind of bring the training mindset in, and I'm like, okay, that looks sketchy. I'm not going to do that. Why is that necessary? I don't really think that's going to do what they say it's going to do. So,
yeah, there's a lot of that, eh? Like powerlifting, I don't know why, is I don't understand, like, if we look at sports in like a strength and conditioning, through a strength and conditioning lens, and we look at like how people prepare for football off seasons, and obviously it's like dependent on like whoever's writing the programming, but there's an adopted mindset of like, what is the objective outcome of training?
mm-hmm.
But because training kind of is the sport, like no one goes on the gridiron with a barbell, they go on with a football. So they respect the fact that, look, what we do in the gym is not, you know, it's an adjunct. But with powerlifting and bodybuilding, and to a certain degree, I think there's a disconnect in the old guard and the way of thinking around, look, we're actually preparing for a sport, right? We're using the same tools, but our mindset in training has to be like practice,
Yes.
right? Not like competing. I think everyone goes into the gym as a powerlifter, and every day is Battle of the Bay, or every day is the US Open, or every day is Pro Raw or the Arnolds. And it's like, no, dude, like, this is like some Allen Iverson shit. Like, we talk about practice here, homie. Like, I think that's a tough thing to disconnect. Have you ever run into objection from other lifters with like a skewed mindset around common training practices that has kind of been altered by your clinical background?
I wouldn't say so quite yet, because I don't think my clinical background has really changed my training too much. Just because I was doing bachelor of kinesiology and biomechanics when I started training, so I already had a little bit of anatomy, a little bit of the biomechanics, a little bit of the physiology as I was starting powerlifting. So I think I had that early on, so nothing's really changed since starting school. But I think what has changed is my mindset around pushing through injuries, because everyone wants to push through stuff. Everyone wants to just do whatever they can to make it to the meet. And now I'm just like, okay, pump the brakes, take a week off. You're not going to get weaker, feel better, and be able to train the next week harder.
What would you say from the onset has been some of the things that when you look at powerlifting that they just get wrong, like common misconceptions? I don't want to go as far as say myth, but like misconceptions of like, you know, like misappropriating a mechanism of improvement, or exercises that you avoid with your background that are just like common lore in powerlifting that just kind of been handed down. What have been like the major ones that you see are just like?
Because of my background, I'm biased to love box squats, but I see it every gym I've been in. People doing box squats are just fucking them up so bad. Like, you'll see them trampolining off the box or just losing their low back as soon as they hit it. And just like, you cannot expect to squat to a box like that and use it as a crutch and then take the box away and be fine. I think that's kind of the biggest thing that I'm seeing down here right now is shitty box squats and wondering why they bomb at the meet.
So you're saying like the common technique that you're seeing is more like total like relaxation, not keeping tension on the box, and then trying to re-engage through their torso and things like that.
And like, you can build momentum on it and squat more that way, but it ain't going to carry over.
Where do you think that came from? Like, where do you think, because I see that and I have theories around that, and I have an idea of where that misconception comes from. I'm just curious as your opinion is, why do you think, is it just because they could lift more weight that way?
Well, I think part of it is the sit back cue, again, air quotes, but people will interpret like sit back as sit, then swing back.
Yeah.
Instead of just reaching.
Right.
And again, the sit back cue, if you're not a multiply squatter, you don't need to be sitting back.
Yeah, but don't sit back. If you love your spotters and the people that need to zercher squat, catch the barbell as it flies off your back, don't do that. Don't do that. It's funny because in one lens, you can look at powerlifters from a strength and conditioning or through a strength and conditioning lens, and you go, man, they're kind of missing the boat a little bit on keeping the objective outcome and understanding practice versus competition. But on the same lens, we can look from a powerlifting perspective at strength and conditioning, and that's where I blame the bastardization of the box squat. Like I look at that, like I look at the way it's utilized in development of athletic performance, and go, you guys what are you fucking doing? Or should we be squatting that guy? Period. So we can sit not necessarily paying attention to our objective outcomes, but look outside ourselves and go, y'all fucking retarded. Like that's not how we're supposed to do it at all. Do you run into much like with classmates, for example? This is something that I struggled with, like having more experience than a lot of my classmates in the lifting realm and having to sit through some lecture, even with professors. Oh, that was just your soul leaving your body through your mouth.
just yesterday, I had to get up from my computer to an online lecture and just like shut everything off and like walk into the kitchen and just like hug Miana because I was so upset she was talking about strength training, and she's talking about how if you have a client coming off of a bicep surgery, you would need to 1 rep max test their bicep curl in order to program their, and I'm just like, what on, like, I had to just like leave the room. I was just like flabbergasted.
Now, all right, here's a question for you, because I can't, like, I stick in the room and I wait until someone's crying. Like I got when I was in 11th quarter, so I was just finishing up my clinic requirements. I got legal action pressed against me from the school, from Iowa, from the highest order, coming down. Like, I go to clinic, I was getting my papers signed off and ready to go, and like I had a good relationship with like the front desk staff in the clinic, and they were like, "We need to get your shit signed now. Like, they're plotting against you." And I literally had a hearing. Like, I had a hearing with the judicial board. I didn't even know there was a judicial board. Heads up, there's a judicial board out of Iowa, and I had a conference call hearing with the vice provo of our school and 2 clinicians that were like pressing charges against me because I can't keep my mouth shut. I was like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Do you like, because for me, we're only as good as the chiropractor down the street, right? Mm-hmm. And that's where, when that perpetuation of misinformation just goes unchecked, it's like, okay, I'm paying money into a entropic system that's going to break down if we say this nonsense. Do you bite your tongue? Are you smart enough to bite your tongue?
I'm definitely less confrontational than you are in that sense. But again, it's like, am I doing myself a favor by being that way? I'd like to think that the less people I piss off, the better I'll be able to do. But at the same time, if it's...
You're the best of us. You're the best we have to offer.
Well, I think you mentioned Stu earlier. Like, if Stu's like far over here on the asshole scale, you're probably about there. I'm a little bit less than you.
Yeah, and that's a great integer scale, because like you don't want to, like, especially if you want to be employed. It's like Stu is the old. So those of you who don't know, we're talking about a friend of ours in Ottawa named Stu Locke. He's the grandpa on the front porch yelling stuff at people walking by. It's like, Grandpa, you can't say that. And it's like,
everything he says is true though, and I love it just because he has the balls to say it.
Right. Yeah. We can admit that in hushed tones in small circles of friends, but it's like, I would never, like, if Stu put up a poll, I would vote no. I can't have it on the public record that I aligned with your viewpoints. But it's tough, right? Like, and that's the interesting thing. When you chose chiropractic college, like, in the stuff that you guys put out, like, and I think we're really similar in the sense that you would probably fit a mold better of a physical therapist when people think what a physical therapist is versus what a chiropractor is. What was your deciding factor outside of having cool training partners to go to chiropractic college? Well,
so first off, I've had very bad experiences with physios in the past. So I'm totally turned off of that profession, whether or not it's, I'd probably just have the shitty physio, just like people have the shitty chiropractor. So that made me thinking I do not want to do that because whatever they learned was absolutely useless. But then get to chiropractic school, a lot of what we're learning is absolutely useless too, so I can't really. But anyways, I have 2 uncles who are chiropractors who are what I would say are very good at what they do. They're not the crazy guy that's going to toggle your atlas and say your liver is healed. But
now,
so that's kind of
go ahead.
Like having uncles in the profession that are a little bit more new school kind of made me think, like, okay, if I'm a chiropractor versus a physio, I think I have a bigger tool bag of what I can potentially do for someone. And that's what led me this direction.
Yeah, I think it's good differentiation too, right? Like, when you start talking muscles and function and not only that, like relating it back to actual training as a chiro, like, you stand out way more, right? And I just did it because it's like, for me, it was like, oh, I get to move to California and I don't need to live in Toronto and go to school when it's like -40 outside. Like, yeah, I'll take that deal. I didn't care what it was. Like, I could have been going down to California for basket weaving. I was gone. But like, I think you go ahead.
Same here. Like, the physio option in Alberta is Edmonton. Like, no one wants to live in Edmonton.
No, it's going to be a big no for me, dog. That's a hard stop.
Yeah.
Now, when you look forward now and like how is it that, first off, what country do you want to practice?
I think that, well, powerlifting is still very high on the priority list. So if I'm going to put that high up, I need to be in the States. I need to be around a good training crew, and preferably I need to stay right here with everyone that I have, because I don't think I'm going to find a better place to train.
Yeah, maybe that like wood panel place in Russia where like Andre trains out of. That I think it's on like I think it's part of like the Kremlin or something. I think that's like on the base. I think Putin lives upstairs. I think that's where they train. Now, long term, head back to Canada, because I've noticed a huge difference in, and I'm kind of like out of the game in the conventional sense, but a huge difference in standard of care from country to country.
I guess I haven't really been to a chiro too often in the States yet, so I can't really speak to how that is versus in Canada.
Well, I find like for me, and it could just be a volume thing, but when I get the, hey, this is the treatment plan payment option, once I refinance my house deal of like, oh, here's your x-ray, it'll take 40 visits. I find that to be more common in the States than in Canada, likely because we have like one school really up in Canada. Do you think at any point from a career perspective outside of powerlifting that you'll make the move north of the border?
Probably not.
Really?
As of right now, I mean, I'm liking it down here. I don't see any reason to leave.
Dude, Florida is the reason America can't have nice things.
It's so much fun, though. Like,
oh my, well, yeah, Calgary's kind of our Wild West, though. Like, Calgary's.
I'm not from Calgary. I'm from a small town called Airdrie, just north of Calgary, and I grew up 20 minutes west of Airdrie on a farm that has bison. So I'm redneck as fuck and fit in just fine in Florida.
That's, man. Me and my buddy Hayde drove from Windsor to Florida in straight shot, like no stops. We stopped at like a Waffle House in like Tennessee or something. I don't even know. And when you drive through like the northern part of Florida, you hear like the banjos from Deliverance, and you're like, these people don't have fucking eyebrows. Like, what's going on here? This is crazy.
It ain't that bad though. Like, aside from our neighborhood meth lady that chases me sometimes, it's...
Excuse me?
Yeah.
The neighborhood meth lady? That's just like a thing?
Well, I mean, maybe it's wrong to assume that she's on meth, but from her demeanor and the scabs on her face...
Okay, let's just start with the fact that she's chasing you. Like, I have a hard rule about running. I stopped running when people stopped chasing me, which was probably about 80 pounds ago. People stopped chasing me. You'd have to be smoking something pretty serious to think chasing you is a good idea.
Man, I was definitely more afraid that she was.
Yeah, that's meth. That's definitely meth.
And I'm like, I like had to text Joe Jordan after that, because I'm like, if this happens, like, what am I allowed to do if she like grabs me? Like, what?
Oh, stand your ground. You can shoot her in the face. That's I'm pretty sure, and don't quote me, I'm pretty sure that's in the Constitution. You could shoot her in the face. Yeah. I mean, okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit, because I think you're in a much, and this is all from an outside perspective, like you're in seventh quarter, like you have an established name as like, especially like in your sport and the sport in general, like a growing name as not only just a credible lifter, but someone who's putting out good information. And you started a brand while still going to school. And has there been any drawbacks or challenges in simultaneously going to school and starting this brand? And I'm more curious from like a interpersonal standpoint with like some of the students you go to school with. Has there been like any pushback or any critique of what it is you're doing?
Not at all, actually. Like, everyone seems super stoked, and I'm actually the second kid in my class to start a brand, actually the third, because they're doing it together. I think you're on the Strength Rehab podcast with Parker and Raul. Oh,
yeah. Oh,
they're in my class.
No way.
And
okay, awesome.
I mean, our viewpoints are a little different between us, but you know what? We're all kind of on the same path and trying to do similar things and trying to put out good content. So why not just support each other?
That was a weird thing when I started in about ninth quarter. Like, I was doing some writing for like my training partner at the time was like this bodybuilder, and I was doing some writing for his website and an email list. And I was like, all right, I should leverage this through social media. Didn't have an Instagram account, couldn't be fucked with it. Mm-hmm. And I was like, all right, well, I'll give it a shot. And like, there was an immediate like, what's this guy doing? What are you doing? What are you doing over here? What's this? What are you taking pictures of and taking video of? So like that was a totally different experience than when I went through. It was like, because I found in going through school, and I don't know how much experience you guys have with this, but there was like a subliminal competition of like someone would like not, oh, I'm going to go to a DNS seminar this weekend and not tell anyone. Like, hey, how come you didn't come out to Blue Chip on the weekend? Like, oh yeah, no, I was just, I wasn't really feeling it, And then to find out like, you were at the DNS seminar, weren't you? And it was like, everyone was trying to get like a one up. So I found when I entered kind of into the social space, it was like a little bit, people's hair on their back went up a little bit. Never ran into anything like that.
Not at all. I mean, there's definitely a little bit of competition, like in terms of grades and whatnot. But other than that, I don't think there's really too much trying to get cut over other people or anything of that sort.
Has anyone joined your gym since meeting you? Has anyone in your...
I've put 2 kids through meet so far and have another one signed up for meet in July. So
you're just unfuckwithable, right? Like that's got to be your stand. Like no one's going to, because we looked at it from a business perspective. Like I looked at it from a I love to train perspective. And so do you know my business partner, Jordan Junta? He's like an Olympic weightlifter, former CrossFitter. And
I know of him, don't know him.
When we did, like I remember doing GIGU, and once the finger goes in the plastic ass, you really start to ask yourself, have you gone through that yet?
I have not yet.
I think it might be 8th quarter.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's just some experience in the field, but I'm just saying. But like the second you do that, it's like, all right, something's got to come out the other end of this. We're soon going to like clinic. Like we need to have patience. And, I didn't get the best grades, man. Like, because how can you? Like when you get taught, 1 RM bicep curl so you can Prelipin chart program your rehab off relative percentages, you're just like, yeah, I'm not going to pay attention. Like I'll study for 2 tests, like the test that you're going to give me, and then, the test of actual clinical practice. But once I got into the clinic portion, like I just spent so much time in the gym that I had a lot of patients coming in. And I'm sure you're the same. Like how many of your lifters are like, can you treat me yet? Like, can you actually see me?
And it's like, well, legally not really.
Right. Close the door, shut this off, shut your phone off, don't take a picture.
Yep.
But I mean, it turned out obviously like to be a good business move, to be super passionate about training. Have you seen other people trying to force that path? Like, especially with what you do and the caliber in which you do it. Like, I don't think no one can pick this up at a weekend and then, you got to dedicate your whole life to it. But have you seen people trying to pick up the passion around lifting because they see it purely from a business perspective?
Not with the people that I'm hanging out with. Like the guys I'm getting to come to the gym with me, they seem genuinely interested in wanting to learn how to train, wanting to get better, and just trying to have a hobby to get them through school.
Now, when you get into practice, do you see that being the base of your market? Like, is that a viable enough option to like, or a saturated enough community that you can actually step in and keep a patient base of like lifters?
I don't think so at the very beginning, because I think getting started, it's going to be impossible to get everyone in the city to come see you. But 5 years down the road, I think I'd love to think it's possible.
And that's the goal, is going to be working primarily with lifters?
Yep. And if I could have a gym clinic side-by-side setup, have something of that sort, it would be the dream.
Now, when you think about like with the online stuff, how does that start to interplay? Like, what's the plan with growing the online, but also thinking about having a brick and mortar?
So I guess what we're doing with our activated performance stuff is the whole reason we're now selling shirts is to get away from online coaching. Just because I do not have a passion for online coaching. I feel like I can do a decent job at it, but it's just like, it's so frustrating sometimes and so much work for how little you get paid that I want to be able to put out educational content and then have the shirts kind of support the income and not have to coach people and be able to help people I want to help for free.
Yeah. And that's like, I think people become good lifters, but like, it's just like becoming I don't know. I've always, there's a book that it's a business book about like a baker. Like, you can be a good baker, but not a good business person. Doesn't mean you should open up a bakery, right? Like a good lifter doesn't necessarily mean a good coach. And I've ran into that dude, literally the same thing, where it's like, people, I'm sure the amount of DMs you get about coaching just because of your aptitude in lifting and your background from an educational standpoint, like that's a very enticing coaching option, is someone that has both of those. But like, I'm on the same boat where the legwork is just not worth it. And it's like, I really don't feel like I don't want to say you're not helping people as much, but like when you think about how much you can help people in person, or how is my time better serviced in actually reaching more people and generating more content, it's like, I think a lot of people fall into that trap of like, well, I get paid money, so I'm going to do it. It's like, well, maybe you should kind of rethink that a little bit.
I think too, it's like with the people that I'm helping with coaching, if I'm not really doing it for the money and I'm doing it because I love them as a person, I really want to see them succeed, I'm going to do a way better job than if it's just collecting a paycheck.
Yeah. And you self-select too, right? Yeah. Which is something that like, I mean, there's clients that I worked with in the early days, even in practice, where it's like, I'm doing this because I like to eat hot food like once a week. That's like literally the second I can do this, you're gone. And I've like fired patients like, look, you need to go somewhere else. Like this isn't this whole thing. This isn't a thing. Now, I guess moving forward with the lifting, obviously with like the current state of affairs, what has filled that void? Like for me, like, you know, I spend more time doing stuff like this that I otherwise wouldn't have time for. With school kind of being a little attenuated, with training being a little bit attenuated, what's kind of been filling those gaps that you'd otherwise not have the bandwidth for?
Basically, learning how to put out content. Because I've historically been not the best at it, but we've been trying really hard now that we have more time to film more, to post more, to try to start up our own podcast. It's going really well.
What's been the biggest challenge?
Learning how to use all the software.
Really? It's all
the video editing and like, I guess learning to speak as well, like talking to a camera.
Yeah.
The first time I tried to make a video, it took like 50 takes to be able to spit it all out, and I still had to trim some shit out, and it was painful.
Well, I think a lot of people, right? Like, you know, I never thought the world would shut down. Like having an in-person thing. Like me and Kayla were joking about it the other day, like, but prior to all this, like we had our whole schedule laid out and it was all in person. And it was like, look, like you're going to change an Instagram algorithm and everyone's going to be fucked. And we're going to be sitting there with the gold standard currency of like being able to go places in public, in public and talk to people. And then Instagram stayed the same. And next thing you know, they shut the world down. We're like, didn't see that coming. Right. But I saw like a lot of people gravitate towards social. So I think a lot of people are in your situation of like, oh shit, I got to talk to this camera. Yeah. But your issue isn't in coming up with stuff to talk about. It's just the talking part.
It's like just being able to communicate in a way that people will actually get it.
Right. Because there's so much intangible about what you're trying to teach, right? Especially at the level that you're at. I find in some ways like that makes it, training with the people you train at might silo your thought process because you're like, oh, everyone gets this.
Exactly. It's so tough too, because I think it's easy to fall in the trap of trying to post to impress a coach as opposed to trying to post to impress the person that actually needs the information.
What's been the biggest like tool you've used to kind of overcome either A, like improve the skill in front of the camera, or B, like be more selective in the actual thing that you want to put out? Like, you know, you could put out stuff that impresses me, but that might fall on deaf ears to like 99% of the audience. And I could sit there and be like, wow, that's fucking crazy. That's like a really nuanced technique for only a guy who squats over $1,000 would ever have to think about. I'll never squat that much. So that's insane insight. But the rest of the people are like, well, I don't get it.
Well, what we've been doing is just like, if someone sends a DMs us a question, we'll just try to turn that question into a post. Or if someone asks help with their technique, we'll try to turn that into a post. Or what they can do for this, we'll try to turn that into a post. You
know, you shouldn't have said that, because now you're going to have like 5,000 DMs tomorrow. And I mean, I think it's super helpful. Like I definitely like when people DM me, and like, because it's experience, right? Like it's experience in things that minimize your experience outside of a geographical bottleneck. Like, you know, if you're just dealing with Port Orange, Florida, it's like, you're dealing with a small subset of the population. But when you're dealing with the world of Instagram, that's going to be a much broader like population base. What are the most common things that you get asked? Like, what are the major, is it around gear lifting? Is it around injuries? Is it around training or periodization? What do people knock on your door for most, do you think?
A lot of like, what band tension should I use? Which is it's a little bit funny to get that question, but you know what? Might as well just send the guy to the Elite FTS band tension chart and be like, hey, this is what Dave recommends. Yeah. And there's also, and other than that, it's a lot of just technique questions like, hey, can you look at my bench? tell me what I'm doing wrong, what I can do better. Hey, look at my squat. What can be better here? I'm not getting too much rehab stuff, but I'm also not trying to put myself out there as a rehab guy yet because I don't feel like I know enough to do it yet.
Yeah. Have you looked at what's going on the internet in the rehab space lately? We need you, Seth. We need you so badly. Like there's me and a handful of other people who are just shouting our lungs out, but like drowning out the noise in that space, I think is equally as concerning as, you know, bad advice on nutrition, bad advice on training. So it's like, if you just do me a favor, man, just start throwing your hat in the ring. Cause it's 2020 and I'm seeing stuff like, well, think about your professor. Think how many professors are like that in rehab. How many people go out into practice, and the second they get a following, it's like, that's trust. Someone's going to go out. I guarantee you, if you go hashtag 1RM bicep rehab, we're going to see someone out there getting like in Russia doing like a strict curl competition or something like that. It's like, oh man, that for me. Go ahead.
That's actually out there, eh? Are you familiar with Daniel Tiniero?
Who?
Daniel Tiniero. He's a Multi-Ply guy. He had a full patellar rupture.
Oh, I was watching some of his stuff the other day.
Yep. So he had an amazing recovery. He's back at Super Bowl at WPO last fall and just kicking ass. But when he was rehabbing that and going to physio, the physiotherapist, when they started his rehab program, they made him do a 1 rep max leg extension.
He tore his quad.
He tore a full quad tendon rupture, surgically repaired, couldn't walk for 10 weeks.
So they did a 1RM single leg quad extension.
Yes. And that's out there.
Dude, get out of your own way. You're the hero we need, man. Please. Like you're a much more likable person than I am. We need you on this side of the aisle. Like how that's the hard part with social media, and like, you know, with this idea of like following is essentially trust. Like it's a social currency in the same way money is basic. Like currency is trust. That's really what it is. And in the social space, that's what you're trading in. It's almost like a personal stock market where it's like, oh, if someone is trading at 100,000 followers, it's like that company is doing well and we have trust they'll continue to do well. But it's like, people have no idea. Like, I mean, unless you have gone through the rigor of like, not only just the academic side, but like the logic side of like, well, what was his squat going into the full quad tendon rupture?
I don't know what the weight was that he tore the quad with off the top of my head, but I know he was squatting over 1,000 at a couple of beats before that. So,
right. So the potential of that quad and the diminished state of that tendon, it's like you don't want to send it. You don't want to run the current through that. Like you don't want to turn that spinal tap up to 11. Like, get out there, please. Like once a week for me, for us, for the people.
I'll see what I can do. We'll see. Give it a run.
From a technical standpoint, like what were the early lessons you learned? Like what are things that if I'm like, look, because I know a lot of guys that listen and a lot of girls that listen to this are in the same boat. They're all in, like not all, but we get a lot of listeners like in the chiropractic college who are basically sitting in the same lectures you are and are just putting their head in their palms going, wait, 1 rep max bicep curl, that doesn't sound right. Like they want to get into the content space. What would be like a couple pieces of advice or some like hard lessons learned out of the gate that you're going through either currently or have surpassed? What are some advice you'd have for someone looking to do what you're doing?
I think similar to just, doing your first meet, just get out there and do it.
Yeah.
And if the first thing you try to do bombs, just try again.
What was the first video?
Oh,
I'm going to link that in the show notes.
I think it's an IGTV called Garage Talk. I forget what the first one was, but I think it was talking about like learning to back down from training.
Okay.
And man, it's something that I've had to learn the hard way because I was balls to the wall for so long until it bit me. And it was something I'm really passionate about talking about, but it was just like, I just get so excited that I forget what I was saying. Recording.
I think, how many takes?
Like literally over 50.
Jesus. I've been there, man.
Yeah.
So when I started, Instagram only had 15-second videos.
Yep.
And then I remember when they switched to 60, and it's like, I don't like, because I talk long-winded about everything. So Instagram, from an education standpoint, I'll write long captions, but very rarely if I do a video on Instagram, can I keep it in 60 seconds. right? Or even when I answer stories, like I'll have a Q&A that's like a bajillion actual little 15-second clips and it answers 2 questions, right? It's like, it's not the platform or the medium for it. So like my issue was trying to fit the message to the medium, right? Rather than like trying to jam my message into like one medium. So that's why like podcasts and things like that are a little bit, I think a little bit better. What was the tipping point for you in saying, okay, fuck it, I'm going to do this? Or was it the second you thought of it, you started recording the video?
It's been on my mind for a long time that we need to start doing something like this, just because if I want to have an impact beyond just, locally, I need to put myself out there.
What was the tipping point?
I think kind of the world shutting down. It's just like, I have all the time in the world to figure this out. I have all the time in the world to do this.
Yeah.
So if I'm not doing it, I'm a piece of shit.
Right. Yeah. I think that's a tough way to look at it. I think it's always the people that should be putting out the information. It's the same thought process that has led them to a position where they're enlightened enough or educated enough or experienced enough to be in a position where they could really help someone. It's the same mindset that allowed them to get all that experience or to get all that information, that you realize that there's so much more to know, and then they're uncertain about putting stuff out. And it's always the people that are so far left on that Dunning-Kruger effect, distribution of knowledge and confidence that are just like, they run to the highest hill and they profess their ultimate wisdom. It's like, you have no idea what the fuck you're talking about, but I am so unbelievably impressed by your ignorant confidence that I'm actually kind of jealous, that I wish I could say anything with as much conviction as this thing that you know nothing about.
And when you're getting started and just trying to start making video posts or whatever, it is hard because you see that and they're so polished in their speaking and they're so polished in everything they're putting out. That's just like, I can't sound that good. I don't sound that good. What am I going to do? How do I compete with this? Yeah,
and I think there's something to be said about like the uncanny valley, which I've kind of talked about before, which is like the phenomenon around like animation, where it's like if they start if they start to look too much like you without actually being real, that it's actually kind of off-putting. And that's what I find with like there's a dude who like was putting his dog in a backpack and doing like, or pretending to put his dog in a backpack. He's one of these Gymshark fucking douchebags and like a bajillion followers. And he did this stuff. And it's like, when I see you, it's like, oh, I know you, like I've met you in person. Like you're real. You are not a caricature of yourself. And there's this unlikeness character of people who are caricatures of themselves on the internet. And it's like, I feel like to me, it's super off-putting. Like it's off-putting to the audience that I'm trying to self-select for.
It's weird having met some people like that in person too.
They're always shorter than I imagine them to be.
But even just the personality, you're like, oh, this is an Instagram.
Isn't that strange?
Yeah.
Like I've seen people, and I'm not going to name names, although I'm sure I've named the name before in the podcast, where like I met him in person. And he actually started recording an Instagram live while I was there, like while I was talking to him. Like you are so socially disconnected, but like met him and he was kind of like shy and like subdued, like, oh, hey, like, how's it going? Like just, and he's a big dude. And then all of a sudden, like, he's like, oh, like, whatever, we're going to put this on social. Then he throws up the iPhone and it's like, next thing you know, he's like, charismatic as all fuck, and then he like the 15 seconds ends and it was just like, all right, welcome back to, like, Dr. Jekyll, and you're like,
that was weird.
Dude, did you not see, like, that was like in the movie Split, like that wasn't me, that was Patricia. You're like, whoa, that's a big problem, man.
You know what though, like that's why I love Dan Bell so much, because Dan Bell is Dan Bell, and you get Dan Bell no matter where you are, no matter who you are. It's just him. And it's
he's terrifying.
Amazing. Well, yeah, he might be the nicest guy on earth too, though.
Right. I see. You know what? Like Florida is bizarro world California, and like it's crazy that Dan Bell's name is Dan Bell, and that you're in chiropractic college lifting with Dan Bell, and I was in chiropractic college lifting with Dan Green, and very similar. Like Dan is Dan on Dan's birthday, on Jesus's birthday, on your birthday. Like he's quiet. He's super nice. He's probably the most generous person I've ever met my entire life. And if you don't know him, he's terrifying.
Yep.
I feel like Dan Bell is very much that. Like I've been in the room. You know when Dan Bell's in the room because he has a gravitational pull. You're like, whoa, like what's going on here? And you just see this like behemoth of a man. You're like, huh, okay. One of these ones is not like the other one.
And the most impressive part about him is seeing how willing he is to help absolutely everyone, no matter the circumstance.
And that's a big misconception, I think, with a lot of lifters. Usually, for the most part, it's like the intermediate, like, you know, lower level meet. Everyone that, like, when you rock up to the big meets, I feel like everyone who's at that level is like the nicest person in the world.
But it's next level with him. Like, the day he broke the all-time world record, actually both times he broke the all-time world record, he was like helping brand new people in the warm-up room.
That's like
overkill.
Yeah. You're just rubbing it in. Now you're just like, man, you got to be that nice. Like, I'm not even that nice and I'm not even that strong. Like, you got to pick one, dude.
Yep. And
go ahead.
And like, he's so good at everything.
Fuck off.
I don't think there's not a single thing on earth that I could do better than him at.
Can he skate?
He played hockey for years.
Son of a bitch. All right. Yeah. I'm done. Yeah. I'm done. I'm just going to learn how to play bocce ball or something. Maybe he's not good at that.
But even like bowling, like we took him bowling once. He's all give this, I don't bowl very much, yada, yada, yada. Fucking strike after strike after strike. Just like, where'd that come from?
Must be nice.
Yeah.
Now, what's the projection right now as far as like Florida with the lockdown, you with your training, school? Like, what do you have a set calendar for like what the next couple of months are going to look like?
Well, gyms are opening Monday, so that's a big plus. I've been training in the garage, just getting the job done, but it's going to be nice to be able to be back with the crew and have some fun. And
what about school?
School, I think, is July 14th.
Take your time. No rush.
Yeah. And honestly, like, I'm loving the online lectures because, again, if it's a class where it's bullshit, I don't have to sit through it.
That's brilliant.
I can just, go through the material before the test and get the job done, and it's awesome. And
then on like the third question, as far as like chronological order of things, how is it that, and I it's going to be weird that like this is something we double back to, but I really think this is something that a lot of people struggle with, especially now. How do you plan on, because you had all this time now, like you had all this time to get the content creation stuff up and running and start to do more posts and get up the apparel line and move away from coaching. How are you going to balance the efficiency of these three when you're back in school, when you're back in full board training? Like knowing now that you've opened this can of worms, people want to hear what you have to say, and like you need to keep delivering this. Do you have a system set up, or have you put any like thought into, okay, I'm going to have less time, but I still need to keep up on this?
Well, so one, I'm so lucky that I have Miata to help me out with this, because she's going to be able to help out a time when I'm back in school as far as producing stuff. And I think that now that I've figured out how to do it a little bit, it's not going to be such a hurdle to do while I'm in school.
Right. Yeah. So it's like, as you have less time to do it, it takes you less time to do.
Yep. Hopefully.
Have you found a particular like vein of, because the way I look at content, I had this described to me by someone like way smarter than me. It was like, your content's meant to answer questions, right? Someone is in a current state and they want to be in a desired state, right? So the content is going to offer them that bridge from their current state to the desired state. So understanding what the desired states and reverse engineering your content from there. So like for me, it's people are injured and they want to get healthy. So that's like one like subset, and like the way I look at like creating content. The other is like people are small and they want to get bigger. Like that's another common thread of like, if I go through the DMs, people, and to a lesser degree, but more so with the podcast, like people are unmotivated and want to be motivated. Like those are kind of the three questions that I try and answer with content. With you, what do you feel like your audience really gravitates towards in you answering questions for them?
Well, like so far with what I found, like I mentioned before, it's like people have a shitty squat and they want to squat less shitty. So it's the
Is that a
technical side
tough
of
thing
things.
to teach? Like that's got to be, because it's so contextual, right? Like, do you just rip off common mistakes that you see all the time, or like do you plan on breaking down? Like I remember honestly, one of the first things, and I haven't seen anyone do it as of late, and one of the first things that really interested me in powerlifting was like, remember Mark Bell back in the day?
Yes,
like OG super training.
I lived in those videos in undergrad. Like,
wasn't it incredible?
Yes,
I learned
like all those
so
breakdowns.
much. Yeah, he looked like fucking Coach Hines from Mad TV.
Yep.
Just like doing the X's and O's thing. And I was like, oh, okay. Like I think that for me, like, because I struggle with that to a certain degree because of just there's so many variations and trying to interpret that information without being like, if I'm in person, I'm like, oh, okay, like, you know, your timing's off and like you're sitting back too early or like you're reaching too early or you're driving your knees out too early. But online where it's like you get one angle, I find it quite difficult. But like insight like that.
What I'm trying to do is present two angles. So at least like to give them an option of like, hey, I'm doing this, maybe I need to go this way, or if I'm doing this, I need to go that way. Like yesterday I talked about on squat, cueing chest up or ribs down, and how they both can have their place depending on how you're squatting.
Oh, you're trying to bring context to the internet? Oh, goodness.
Yeah,
now, you mentioned a podcast.
Is
this an exclusive?
Well, we put out the first one, and it was a learning experience. We only had the one mic, so we had myself, Miana, and Daddy Tiniero on, and we were sat up, so like Miana was super close to the mic, Danny was a little bit closer, and I was so far away that I just had to like basically cut myself out of the podcast just because you could not hear me at all.
Really?
Yeah.
Learning curves. But I think that's a better medium for context though, right? Like I think you on a podcast with like your like experience and your education, like it's hard to play the high res game on Instagram. Like I didn't really start to until I had someone really do it for me, like to take camera shot with 4K. You know, there's like a 6K now. Found that one out the other day. I thought the guy was fucking with me. I was like, this is just going to mean I have to pay him more for an hour. That's all that is. I don't think this is a real thing. But it's like, I'm still sitting there. She's like, where can I get my film developed? Does anyone have a dark room I could borrow? Like, I'm going to bring this into the X-ray room and try and process this. Maybe that'll work.
You know what I did that was really, really pissed me off in hindsight? Is when we were first kind of getting this started, I bought a camera that I thought, okay, we'll be able to film and like make good videos with this. The camera's built-in mic sucks, and it doesn't have input for an external mic. So I'm stuck with this thing that the sound is shitty, and I don't know what to do with it. And
you should try getting like a lav mic, or even using a recorder like this. Dude, from the technical stuff, we can talk off the air about this. But like, I've made every mistake known to me, and people ask me for advice. It's like, well, I kind of don't want to give it to most people because it's like, if you make these mistakes and you can overcome the hurdles, at least you have the passion to keep beating your head against the wall and see how much you can do it before you bleed to death. But at the same time, like from a technical, like if it's overlapping things like that, I've inadvertently become like kind of techie in having to like figure all this shit out for myself. But yeah, if you guys are doing the podcast thing, let me know, because that's definitely like where our efforts go. Like, look at this thing. Like I'm literally hooked up to like some sort of Houston, command center here. Like, and I have no business. Like, I lift weights kind of mediocrely a little bit. And as mediocre as I am at lifting weights, was more mediocre at the tech side. But it sucks for me because I remember like it should be the quality of the content that reigns supreme, right? And it's like you have 8K information, like the back tightness video you did. It's like, look, you want to listen to the guy who squats 1,003 about back tightness, right? The Gymshark guy who's lifting with his dog in his backpack doesn't know fuck all about back tightness. He's shooting 4K shit, right? But it looks good and it gets pushed to homepage and all that. Like, it's definitely it's an uphill battle that people like, the idea of almost like price and value. Right? Like, there's good value here, but this guy looks high production. And like, but it's so much easier for you to just here's your mic setup, here's your camera, here's your external recorder. Go out and now with these tools and fight against the Gymshark crowd. That's like, you'd almost rather be in that position.
Yeah. How did you really break through all that to get to where you are now?
You know what it is, man? It's going to sound really weird, but I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that I'm from Windsor. So, and there's a reason that there's more to it. Like, I always gravitate more towards the help than the actual person. Like, so when I lived in California, I ended up in this dude's house. His name was Maverick McNeely. So Scott McNeely was the CEO of Sun Microsystems. He's like the longest tenure CEO of any Silicon Valley company. worth $1 billion, like with a B. And like we pulled up, I thought it was a gated community, but the gate was towards his house. He has his own like par 3 course on this like big hill. So just tell you what kind of like fuck off money this guy has. He has 3 sons. They all play hockey and golf like quite well. I think one of them actually played at Stanford. And he has a full size ice rink in his backyard with a view of the ocean in California, equipped with Zamboni. So like some of the San Jose Sharks would go practice in this guy's backyard on the hill in like Woodside, California. And so like he had a full basketball court. He had an elevator. And I remember going there, and this is like, you want to talk product to your environment. I went there, and the only person I talked to at this little like art show thing was the maid, because she was from Montreal, and she was like this 60-year-old French Canadian lady, and that was the only person I felt comfortable talking to. I have no business being there. All of my friends either deal drugs or put together Chrysler Pacificas. So it was like I always gravitated towards the people that were like if I went to record a podcast and it was some like big, fancy shit production, I would talk to the guy who would be running the camera or the guy setting up the audio, and like I would become better friends with them. And not because like, I really care about audio engineering. It was just like, okay, this guy's out of the spotlight. He's just here to do his job. And I like, that's, I feel like that's how I am. Like, I'm not like, this is a job for me. This is a means to an end. Like, I enjoy it much more now than I did in the past, but like, I would gravitate towards that. So I would just learn from these guys. Like my friends and my friends down in Miami are great. Like, they have a really solid staff as far as like the media team goes. But like, their photographer is named Caesar. I literally texted Caesar this morning. So I think that was my first point of leverage, was like, once I had enough, like we were getting enough traction, I would like get someone to shoot something for us. But when I'm getting them to shoot, I'm just learning. Like, hey, well, what's the deal with this camera? Oh, that's a mirrorless. What does mirrorless camera mean? How is the Sony A7 II different than a Sony A7 III? Oh, okay. What's that top mounted mic? Is that better than the lapel mics? What's the difference between a lapel mic and a lav mic? Should I go with Bluetooth or should it be wired? Should I do a boom mic or a shotgun mic? And so like, I would just, in the same way, honestly, man, it was the same way that like I learned about training. I realized this was my big hole. Like when I see same like, elite, all the old Dave stuff, all the old West Side stuff, is like I go to the gym, it's like I don't know anything. And now I would look at like all this tech stuff, like I don't know, how do I not know what this is? Right? This seems to be like an integral piece of this business. Like I thought, my mom spun me this narrative, like go to school, get an education, and everything would be fine. I was like, dude, I was 25 years old. I was homeless, living out of my car in the Silicon Valley, but I had a doctor title before my name. Like, this is not right. This is not, Louise Shallow fucking lied to me. Right. So I was like, but then he was like, okay, if this is, and I see a lot of like, there's a disconnect in the old guard that just won't get into the social media space. Right. And there's some guys who have taken to it and I almost feel like entitled to be able to monetize after like and I don't need to name names with you. You know who I'm talking about, where they put stuff out and they kind of shit on the new wave. But it's like, look, these are the rules of the game. Win the game. It's like, oh, easy. Yeah, done. So for me, it's a lot of like picking up, just like when you learn to squat or you're getting your squat perfected, you get a damn bell. It's like, that's a pretty good fucking place to learn how to squat. So when I thought about, look, I need to learn the technical side of this, like checking insights on Instagram, right? Creating KPI metrics from a business perspective and carrying that over from social into your point of sale. Like I can't pay rent at an Airbnb with likes and subscribers. So it's like, how do I convert higher percentages? What does my dashboard look like? Integrating that into QuickBooks and creating like basically performance charts of like, okay, if we get this many downloads, we can predict this many sales. So a lot of it's like tech meets business systems. And then on the front end, there's a sophistication to it that I haven't quite figured out, in the same way that like someone could watch you squat and be like, yeah, it's just a squat. But that's what makes it sophisticated. It's like, yeah, to you, it looks like a squat. But to anyone who respects the art of it, is like, oh, there's so much behind the scenes to that. Right. Like, and I used to be like that with photography. It's like, I will look at a picture and like, yeah, what? It's like a guy's face 4 times with 4 different colors. Like, I don't get what's the deal with this fucking Warhol guy? Huh? Am I right? Yeah. Am I right? So it's like, I think the artfulness is when it's done and you don't know it's done. So in understanding that, oh, there is an art to audio post-production, or there is an art to content creation to a certain degree. And I fucking hate the word, but like there's a lot that goes into it that I can parallel with training. And then once I adopted that really helped. But I think to me, it's like, just like when I learned to squat, you know, Dan and Andrew, when I learned to deadlift and bench, Dan and Andrew, and it's like, okay, so I need to find the equivalence of that in my network for this. And I need to put myself in that environment. So that for me, it was everything. Cause it's like, I wanted to be the old guard. Like, I don't give a fuck. Like when Dave Tate started following me on Instagram, I remember, like it was February. It was cold, and I was in Ohio, staying at John's house. It was the day after the Super Bowl. It was February 4th last year. I remember that. You can carve that date on my tombstone because I want that guy to look at my stuff and be like, "That's sick." I don't give a fuck if some like, you know, slapdick influencer, like that's the people I want respect from. So it's like you have to pay an homage to the old guard, in my opinion, but at the same time, be able to do it in the new school way that people actually. So it's a hard balance. Like you don't want to sell out, and you don't want to be like, you know, I don't know, what's an example of like common douchey shit done on the internet. Like I'm not going to sit there and run like a promo code. Like that's one thing I have for me is like, if sponsors, no, I don't do promo codes. Fuck it, I don't do it. You want to sign me for something, apparel, supplements, that's my line in the sand. Because I know if I posted that and Dave under the bar liked it, he'd just be like, you fucking sellout.
Feel dirty.
Yeah. But it's like, I think that's one of the biggest things was like, all right, here's my line I won't cross, right? Like we're putting up a program, and by the time this comes out, it'll already have come up. But like, even in like some of the still screenshots, like, no, that doesn't make sense. The you know, we're saying mobility in the header, but the next thing is a squat. It's like, I need some sort of like dynamic PNF there. So it's like, it allows you to pay more attention to detail, but all of the details, like it's consumed my life. It really has. Well, because think, man, like how much information you have that you spent so much time gathering through experience that no one else will have.
Tons. And like, I think bringing it back to what I've already been through, it's like I had to be obsessed with training to get to where I am with training. And it's like I'll need to somehow find that obsession with producing content in order to get close to where guys like you are with producing content.
But how you do one thing is how you do everything.
Yep.
Right. Like,
so,
and that's it's like,
on one side,
people don't, what's that?
On one side, you have to be absolutely terrified with how much there is now to figure out. But on the other side, it's like, okay, I've kind of done this already. I can't figure it out. And
the thing is like, and proof of concept, like you've seen Dan Bell squat 1,000. So it's like Roger Bannister running the 4-minute mile. It's like, you know, a human being can do it. You have a knuckle dragging chimp able to figure this out. It's like, oh, okay. Like if this ranting dude from Windsor, Ontario can sort it, I'm pretty sure we're good. But like, I can't stress enough to like people listening. Like how many guys in the world have squatted over 1,000?
Well, I have no idea.
I'd say less than 100.
Raw, less than 100 for sure. Multi-Ply, there's a ton.
But there's not a ton, because there's not a ton of people in Multi-Ply Powerlifting. There's only a handful of you sadistic fucks that are walking around still.
I think, the 1,000-pound mark, there's a fair bit because a lot of local meets at the SPF, you move 4 inches with the ground, you'll get it put in.
Right.
But that 1,100-pound mark gets a little bit thinner.
Yeah. So like 1102?
Yep.
Yeah. So 1102, like that is an experience that like I remember CT Fletcher?
Yep.
Like, remember how that video came out that made him super popular? It was the strongest guy you never heard of?
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, that was insane when it came out.
Right. But it was just the production value.
Yep.
Right. Like and the thing was the CT, like he's not a character of himself. That's who he is. Mm-hmm. The only thing that was different was these kids spun it up in a 4K with jump cuts and good edits and subtitles. Right. And that, it got a lot of traction, but like the experience, CT hasn't done anything that you haven't done. Right. Like the 1,000-pound, the 1,100-pound, like suit, no suit doesn't matter. Like I was there when Vlad did 1117 in Australia.
Well, that's way more gnarly than.
But dude, when you unrack that bar and you're standing there, like, and you're just ready to ride the lightning, like I cannot imagine like what goes through your head. And that's an experience that I think just had like the experience of everything it takes to lead up to that just has to be shared. Like, I think that to me is so rare. Cause like, I mean, I don't know what Vlad Alzahov's Instagram account is, and I don't necessarily know what his educational background and career trajectory is. He's terrifying. He slept for the most of the warm-up. He hit 4 warm-ups, went out, misgrooved his second attempt, had the the stones to go back under a heavier weight for his third, and then take 11-17. But it's like, I think you're just this perfect storm of like, more so like from the evidence side, like experience, right? Like you can read all the books, and I can read all the books, and I can work with all the people. You can do the same, but the one thing that you can do that I can't is stand up with 1,100 pounds.
Well,
dude, that's the mountaintop. Dude, no fucking way, man. I put on a squat suit. I would probably get less because there'd be no way I'm too old to learn new shit. I couldn't put on a squat suit and figure it out in time before my body just imploded. So like, I just think it's cool. Like, I think it's promising for me because like, you always try and see like you want to put out good quality information, right? But you want that information backed up with evidence, and it's not just research. And I think you just strong arm the fuck out of everyone. Like it's an exciting proposition to see like, okay, like this is going to be like an ace in the hole for like real evidence-based information, because no one's climbed. Like, yeah, you can get a PhD, whatever. Like you have tons of friends with PhDs. They studied one thing for like 8 years. They're fucking useless outside that. I mean, they know how to learn, but it's going to take them a while to discern out what it is they need to learn on a certain topic.
I think what you were talking about the other day about evidence-based versus basing it on research, that's something that so many people need to understand, because you can find so much shit in studies that has zero application, then have some personal trainer trying to apply whatever bullshit they read in the study and just turn into a giant mess of who knows what. Like,
well, that's the context. Like, have you ever heard the quote like, my head's in the oven, my feet are in the freezer, but on the whole, I feel pretty good?
I have not, no.
That's research. That's how I see research being applied. It's like, okay, we're trying to create or utilize an average from polar opposite results.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm excited for the stuff you got going on, man. We'll put all the links in the show notes and the websites and all that. Quick rundown, podcast, Instagram, website, just so they can go to it right now before clicking the show notes. Where do people find you?
Podcast is Activated Performance Radio. It's just on Spotify right now. We're still waiting for iTunes approval, but who knows?
It'll
how long
be up by
take.
the time this goes. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Instagram, activated.performance. I'm at Seth.Albersworth, and that's about it. I don't have Facebook, don't have anything else. So
we just shy of giving you the home address. All right, wicked. Guys, check it out. I'll put it all in the show notes. We'll put it up on Instagram when this episode goes live. Appreciate your time, man.